Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, and I hope you're all staying safe and sound and well. I'm extremely delighted to take part of the COMEX 2021 virtual event, the first of its kind in Oman. First, allow me to introduce myself. I am Ghada Kharusi, Deputy Chairperson of the Fintech Committee at the Central Bank of Oman, and I'm also heading the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox. Today, my contribution to this event is to be speaking to you mainly about the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox as a concept, its stages, the eligibility criteria for the applicant, and the central bank's expectations on this regard. I will take approximately 20 minutes. Before I start with the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox, I'll take a step back and talk to you about the CBO's Fintech Vision. So to keep up with the rapid developments in the financial technology sector or the fintech sector, the Central Bank of Oman has constituted a fintech committee with a vision to build a dynamic digital financial ecosystem that fosters financial development, providing sustainable support to competitive and diversified economic sectors in the Sultanate through innovation. And how is this done? Well, from a regulator's perspective and as a first step towards the Fintech Vision, the Fintech Committee has put together a Fintech roadmap. It's a 3-year plan which started in 2020 that paves the way for Oman's Fintech ecosystem. And it's very much in line with Oman Vision 2040, focusing mainly on enabling policies, building the proper infrastructure, capitalizing on local talent, and creating demand. Now, one of the initiatives that has been rolled out is the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox, which I will be talking and focusing on today. According to CGAP, a regulatory sandbox is a tool for developing evidence about how a new product, technology, or innovative business model works and the outcomes it produces. Now, the evidence gathering can help confirm some regulatory concerns about the impacts of the innovation, allowing only those beneficial innovations to reach the marketplace. Back in early December last year, the Central Bank of Oman has launched its Fintech Regulatory Sandbox, announcing the opening of its first cohort or theme, accepting applicants or innovations in the field of payment solutions. We have designed our sandbox in the Central Bank of Oman in a way that is cohort or theme-based, and we decide on the theme based on the needs and the demands in the Omani market, and after conducting thorough research. So what is a sandbox? It's a virtual space in which applicants can test their innovative fintech solutions. The solution should be at an advanced stage rather than just an idea. And the testing is done in a live and relaxed regulatory environment for a limited time period and under a very well-defined parameter by the central bank. The testing is live in the sense that it is done on real volunteer customers. And the sandbox is open for licensed institutions and non-bank financial institutions like fintech companies and startups, both local and international. You might be wondering why the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox is significant at this timing. And I can say that under the current circumstances, the Regulatory Sandbox can potentially bring innovation to the marketplace with greater speed, efficiency, proof of concept, lower costs, and with reduced regulatory uncertainty and hindrances. And I believe that the primary goal of a regulatory sandbox is to reduce this regulatory uncertainty, which can discourage and hinder innovation. That's why the task force, the Sandbox Task Force, always engages with the applicants to offer guidance that would focus on, 1, how to better interpret central bank regulation in the context of the applicant's specific solution, or 2, how to assess the potential regulatory implications of the applicant's proposed business. If I can take you briefly through the Fintech Regulatory Sandbox application process, the process falls under the following 5 stages in general. For the application phase, the Sandbox framework, which includes all the eligibility criteria, frequently asked questions, application letter, and all the relevant details are published on the central bank's website under the FinTech page. And the applicant should meet the eligibility criteria and submit the application online to the Sandbox email, which is sandbox@cbo.gov.om. After that, the Sandbox team will do a thorough run on whether the idea is innovative in nature and whether it's presenting any added value to the customer in terms of lowering cost, for example, and whether the applicant is presenting a clear business case. We also check the compatibility of the banking and payment infrastructure and if it's ready to be deployed in the Omani market. We will work on putting in place relevant safeguards with regards to complying with anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism requirements, and having proper customer consent in place and meeting the security requirements. Now, when all those requirements are met, we can give certain other regulatory exemptions for the purpose of testing. Then only the applicant will start the live testing cycle for a period of 6 months. The safeguards here is the maximum number of clients that should be included in the testing phase and the amount and volume of transactions. Now, sometimes some applicants, to be able to test their solutions, would require some sort of integration with central banks' payment systems. In such cases, the applicant should specify the type of system that he is willing to integrate with and comply with the given rules and security requirements before commencing into the live testing phase. And finally is the exit phase, where the applicant is presented with 3 scenarios. The first is that he would require an extension period for testing. The second is that the applicant has failed and would require to exit, or the applicant would succeed and the Sandbox team would refer the applicant to obtain a license from the concerned departments at Central Bank. The eligibility criteria, or the Sandbox eligibility criteria, is simply what we look at or evaluate when we receive an application. And I would like to elaborate further on what we would factor in when we evaluate applications. And I'll give examples of positive indicators, just to put things into perspective. The first thing is that the applicant should be presenting an innovative idea. And when we evaluate innovative ideas, we look into the proposed solution and try to answer the following questions. 1, is the solution offered significantly different from existing offerings in Oman? And has the applicant provided market research showing the same? 2, is the solution offering a new use of technology, like artificial intelligence, for example? Or is the solution showing a scale up in existing technologies deployed in Oman? Secondly, the innovator or applicant must produce sufficient evidence that their product offering will present benefits to the customer. Now, our evaluation here will be based on whether the applicant has supported its application with research or simulation results, showing that the solution offers potential benefits such as improved security, customer experience, efficiency, quality of product, or lower prices. Another thing we'll be evaluating is whether the innovator is able to demonstrate that the solution they are offering has potential to improve access to financial services. In other words, would it increase financial inclusion in Oman? The innovator should be able to produce a comprehensive assessment of the risk that the solution can directly or indirectly pose to the customers, as well as a mitigation plan to ensure consumers remain adequately protected through the testing exercise. And finally, whether the innovator has sufficient resources in place to provide appropriate redress to customers if required. In terms of readiness, or thirdly, readiness for testing and deployment in the Omani market. And in terms of readiness, and one of the main challenge that we have been facing actually with the applicants is the disability to distinguish between a sandbox testing platform and an idea in its initial phase that would be best fit for an incubator like an innovation hub, for example. I think it is very important to clarify this point to manage the expectations of the applicants. So one of the main differences is that the sandbox is a framework with a set of rules to be met. It is made for those fintech solutions that are at an advanced stage, whereas the innovation hub, there's no set of rules to be followed. And the fintech idea there is mostly in its initial stages of development. The sandbox is also done on a live manner with actual volunteer customers. For the Innovation Hub, there's no live testing, it's only an incubator. The guidance offered in the sandbox is minimal in nature, in a sense that it's mostly based on regulatory guidance. As for the Innovation Hub, a lot of mentoring is required and at all levels. I can add by saying that one of the initiatives of the FinTech Committee is also to work on an innovation hub for the sector with the relevant stakeholders. Now, going back to the sandbox readiness, the innovator must produce a well-developed testing plan that at a minimum contains positive indicators like, for example, we expect the innovator to have a comprehensive testing plan in place that identifies the key milestones or KPIs, a timeline, and the likelihood of achieving the target outcomes during his live testing in the sandbox. The applicant also should be able to present results of previous lab simulations carried out on its proposed technology, or even results of some security tests that would allow him to integrate with central banks' payment systems, for example. The readiness also depends on how the applicant or the innovator can demonstrate that he has resources required to start testing right after receiving the approval. And finally, the exit plan. As part of the exit strategy, the innovator must include a description of the future development and deployment of his solution and how it will work out in Oman, including an explanation of the possible endgames of the sandbox testing exercise, whether it's a positive endgame or a negative one. We will be evaluating the details presented to us on the availability of extra resources, for example, needed for full deployment of the business idea in Oman. Now, the exit strategy should include also the adverse scenarios that can lead to an emergency exit and a compensation plan to ensure customers are insured in such cases. Just to give you some statistics, since the launch of the sandbox, we have received a total of 8 applications, and out of the 8 applications, 2 were international applicants. And currently, out of the 8, we have 2 applicants who are about to commence with the integration phase. For all those applicants that has approached us and they do not currently fall under the current payment cohort, the Sandbox Task Force would still assist the applicant by highlighting the shortcomings and their proposals against the eligibility criteria to get them ready for the next cohort. So what happens post that sandbox testing is successful? Well, since the sandbox allows for a testing or experimentation grounds only, post-successful graduation from the sandbox team will revert the applicant to the relevant departments at the central bank, and they would commence with the licensing procedures before the go live. This brings me to the end of my presentation, and I have some key takeaways or 2 major takeaways from my side. One is that due to the pandemic, I feel that the pace of digital transformation will only accelerate from here. And as a result, we will be seeing more innovation in the banking and financial sector that would possibly require testing in the sandbox. 2, the central bank is a partner in promoting financial innovation and inclusion and shall stay ahead in supporting those beneficial innovations through its powers in enabling policies and the regulatory environment. Finally, I would also like to thank COMEX for this wonderful opportunity and great organization. And we can always be reached by email, sandbox@cbo.gov.om for any queries, questions, and all the materials that I have spoken about today can be found on the Central Bank's website under the FinTech page. I wish you all a very pleasant rest of the day. Thank you.